such a cool modern age thing that we can do, that think of an idea, write out a script, go out and film it, come back, edit it, and to put it out on the internet, and hundreds of thousands, millions of people watch it.
It's like shocking to me. You were like, I record all of these vlogs on my phone.
Yeah, everything. What drew me to YouTube and what still does is that I kind of have the freedom and autonomy to go where I want, do what I want with whoever, and put it together in a packaged, nice way that hopefully lots and lots of people enjoy at.
You spoke about scathing comment. How did that hit on like a human level?
It was tough. I think that regardless of your profession, even taking YouTube out of the equation for a second, I think that the worst feeling someone can have is being like fully misunderstood.
Can you almost, as a creator, engineer virality through like just studying the competition and the market?
This is the #1 piece of advice I think any creator could benefit from, and that's the way to grow on YouTube, I think, is to...
Okay, so before we get into this episode, literally right before I headed into the studio, my team handed me some research, and what it said is that less than 50% of the people that watch this channel are actually subscribed. When I heard it, I nearly fell off my chair. But no, in all seriousness, please subscribe to this channel. And if you do, I promise that we will take every part of this show to the next level. Scale the guests, scale the production, scale the marketing. So please subscribe to the channel and let's grow together. You went from working a 9-to-5 corporate job in consulting to being a successful YouTube creator, making multi-six figures a year doing YouTube. And so we're going to get into that because I think you took a very strategic approach, which I think a lot of people will find value in. But before we get into it, I wanted to go to the beginning, right in the beginning.
Sounds good.
And I wanted to kind of get your context and understand kind of your formative years, your childhood years. And the question of, in that period of time, were there signs that you'd be doing what you're doing now?
I wouldn't say there were signs that it would be YouTube specifically, but that it would be entrepreneurial and something that's my own. Absolutely. I think that being an entrepreneur, though I do think it's a spectrum where you're incredibly huge risk taker, and then others that do more calculated risks, which I think I fall more on that side of things. I think I still showed those signs pretty much since day one. Like when my family and I took an RV trip to the beach, a lot of times, but one of the times specifically, and I still have the photo of it, I wanted to make a little bit of money as like a 6-year-old. I thought it was fun to kind of see how I could like create an enterprise. So I literally collected trash from the beach and tried to sell it, which is, not the best business model, I now realize, but just since day one, I would try and do the lemonade stand thing, the like selling baked goods, all of that to make a couple bucks because I just thought it was a fun game. And I really, really enjoyed kind of the business aspect. So yes, from day one, I knew it would be something that was my own. As far as it being YouTube, a little bit. I mean, my dad is a pilot, but also a photographer. And so he was he was snapping thousands of pictures of me and my brother. And I definitely liked the camera a bit more than I think my brother did. So I was always in front of the camera. I modeled in high school. And so that gave me some experience in front of the camera as well. But something about modeling I really didn't love because I couldn't be myself. Like, you're there to kind of advertise the clothes or whatever it is you're modeling, versus YouTube. I get to be myself for a living, which is really, really cool. So kind of, sort of, but entrepreneurial, absolutely.
That's interesting. It's interesting kind of that combination of like, one, obviously you want it to be creative, but then also the importance of being yourself.
Yeah. Essential.
Yeah. Can you talk about that? Because even I think, and we'll go on to talk about your content, but that feels like a very important thing to you, that feeling of being able to be yourself. Like why do you think that's such a strong point for you?
I think I don't know. I really like being in my own skin, I guess. I just, I think I have, I don't know. I'm a fan of my own life, I guess. And I feel like I have a lot to share, and it's comfortable. I like showing my personality. Acting never appealed to me, even though I kind of like the camera facing things. I never wanted to really, be someone else for a living, as fun and cool as that job seems. It just appeals to me a lot more to be able to show my personality and make my jokes, I don't know, I feel comfortable in my own skin, maybe is the best way to put it.
Yeah.
Still, that's a work in progress. I feel like our whole lives, but yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned feeling comfortable in your own skin, and it was interesting to me in the research process or the preparation process for this episode. It was interesting hearing even about the influence of your parents and some of the things that you said. Talking about your dad, you said, my dad especially, he did what he loved from the moment he was born, being a pilot. And then when you were talking about your mum, you said, my mum had a bit more trial and error, but she ended up doing something she loved and starting her own business. And I think it's from her that I probably get that go-getter, do my own thing mentality. And so I thought that was like, it kind of even relates to that thing of being yourself, of being comfortable in your own skin. Can you talk about the influence of your parents on kind of your mindset and even your vision towards work?
Absolutely. Yeah, they're very instrumental. And I think these are some of these realizations I've had, honestly, even more recently. First of all, they're a bit older, which I think has its pros and cons. Cons obviously being that I won't have them around when I'm in my 40s, 50s, the way that they had their parents around. So that's sad. But besides that, they lived a lot of life before my brother and I were born. And I think that just gave them, they were both retired my entire life, pretty much. There were a couple of years there in the beginning, but I don't remember them when my dad was flying. And they were just able to always be around, and they just had a very, very broad perspective, I think, of what matters in life, just because they had kind of reached the point where they were able to gather all that wisdom, And so to your point or I guess my quote about kind of what I got from both sides of my parents, I think that seeing my dad, starting with him, seeing him do something that he just absolutely loved, literally from the moment he was born. I mean, yeah, he couldn't fly as an infant, but his dad, my whole family were all pilots. And so he saw his dad flying, and he knew from the moment he was 3 years old that he wanted to be a pilot. And that's what he did. And then, yeah, my mom did have some more trial and error, like went to college for something that she didn't end up doing, and then found her way into the entrepreneurial side of things. And so I think that what I gathered from them was, even subconsciously, because it's not like they were drilling these lessons into me verbally. It's just, they led by example. I saw, them both doing something that they did love and follow their gut kind of. Granted, they're a different generation. So it's not like they were expecting me to necessarily do the same thing. I think that once I got into Wharton and started going down the sort of business corporate path, they were happy about that. So it's not like they were wanting me to jump off and do something creative and so different off the beaten path. Not really. I did that myself. But I think little do they know they had more influence on that decision than they probably realized.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. You know what's, we had a guest a couple of weeks ago. He said something which I thought was so good. He says, more is caught than is taught, especially as a kid, which is the fact of like, we just observe so much as children, and we can hold on to it, and we can learn things, even if it's not something that's directly said to us or taught to us. And so I'm curious, at that age, what were your aspirations? Like, did you have an ambition that you were going to do something different? Did you have the clarity at that age, or was it more kind of open?
I had the clarity that I wanted to own my own business. Like that I knew from day one, just because I heard my mom say that she did. And I was like, that sounds awesome. And knowing what kind of lit me up and what energized me, I liked the idea of having my own thing. So that I knew, but not exactly what it would be in. I needed to go through my own good amount of trial and error before I figured that out. But yeah, so going back to the entrepreneurial side of things, I knew I would end up there, but just didn't know exactly what it would be. And the way my dad had clarity with flying, like I didn't have that, but I found my way there. So that's cool.
Yeah. It's actually, I think when you're experiencing it, it's not always the nicest, like that, the trial and error.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great way to put it, but it's actually a critical piece of the whole journey. And the story is that trial and error. And so I want to get into it because you went to like very prestigious, like academic institutions. And then I was even reading about some of like your early internships and like work experience. And I think the thing that kind of came through is like you were almost learning about yourself at every stage. Mm-hmm. And so can you speak to that? Like when it comes to those kind of early experiences in working and in internships and all that stuff, are there any moments, stories that kind of come to mind, that kind of just key learnings, things you were picking up?
I'd say so. I think that my first main work experience was modeling, which I spoke to a little bit already. Like I knew I enjoyed kind of being in front of the camera. I enjoyed some performative aspects and the creative side of things, but I knew it wasn't what I wanted to do for a living just because I couldn't be myself. And also, oh my gosh, like to make a full living at that, first of all, is incredibly difficult. I'm not trying to purport that I would have hit it off if I really went for it with modeling. But that was a good experience. And then I was in business school, and then my internships were in finance before I went into consulting, and private equity is what my two internships were in, and real estate private equity. But anyways, I would get into, some moments that really do stand out to me is that walking through those halls and seeing everyone business formal, buttoned up, and performing at such a high level. In some ways, I found it inspiring, and I respected the people there, but I just pretty much from the get-go realized that wasn't me. I felt totally out of place. And I don't think it was just a matter of imposter syndrome. I think I realized like, this is not my path. Still very grateful to have had those experiences because like you said, trial and error, if I didn't do that, maybe I would have gone down the finance route full time instead of consulting. And that would have taken me a little bit longer to get to where I am now if I had done that. So that was finance. And then I realized, something a little bit more collaborative, a little more creative, at least the way that they market it. I think that consulting for full time would be better for me than finance. And so I recruited for consulting for my full-time job after I graduated college and got the full-time offer first at a firm called Oliver Wyman, great firm. And then I ended up working at BCG after that. So two different consulting firms. But I think that to answer your question about kind of formative moments or things that really stood out to me, I think that, well, I had quite a journey through consulting, but towards the end, I think that I would look to my left and right at BCG, which is the last place I was, and see these people that really, really cared and worked incredibly hard for the client and to produce a really, really great, valuable, output. And I didn't care. I got to the point where I really didn't care. And that's a horrible place to be when this is your full-time job. It is so much of your life. And to know just so clearly that I didn't really want to be there, like what, that's a waste. We only have one life. We can't do that for too long. And so I think that rather than hating on consulting and feeling like this job sucks, it was more like, Taylor, what are you doing? Like, this isn't for you. Like make a change. And so that it was kind of a couple things. One, just that feeling, which grew even more strong as time went on. And then finally, my very last project at consulting was a very tough one where, I was up working till 1 a.m. most nights and not sleeping too much, not exercising at all. I was like, what am I doing? I don't even have to be here because YouTube was already, I was making enough more from YouTube than I was from consulting at that point. So I was like, geez, Taylor, like you've done the thing, get out. And I'm glad I did. So
can you talk about that? What is it that you loved about YouTube or still love about YouTube?
It's like, it will never cease to amaze me how cool it is to think of an idea, write out a script or don't write out a script, maybe an outline, whatever type of video it is, go out and film it, come back, edit it, spend days editing it to so that way it forms a good narrative and looks good and what have you, and to put it out on the internet and hundreds of thousands, millions of people watch it. This like idea that I conjured up. And of course the idea comes from so many, internally, but also so many different influences and all that, of course, but that is just so cool to me. And then also the fact that I can be myself, like we've been talking about while doing it's just so cool. And I could do it from my laptop in my bedroom, or out in the city, whatever your medium is. But I think that is such a cool modern age thing that we can do that, my parents for their generation, like couldn't have even dreamed of, because without the internet, you obviously can't do this. And so I think that the opportunities that we're afforded this generation, if that's what you really want to do, I'm not saying it's easy and not everyone could excel at it necessarily, but it's just a cool job. And so what drew me to YouTube and what still does is that very thing, that I kind of have the freedom and autonomy to go where I want, do what I want with whoever, and to like film it and put it together in a packaged, nice way that hopefully lots and lots of people enjoy. I don't know if that's a good answer, but I think that's the heart of it. The freedom that the job allows me, the creativity, and those are kind of the headlines.
Yeah. You know, it's, and I love it. It's like, when someone's kind of found their calling and something that they love, you can feel it in even how they speak about it. And I can see it even in your face, like talking about YouTube. And I think one of the things, we spoke about this literally just before we started recording, and it was like shocking to me. You were like, I record all of these vlogs on my phone.
Yeah, everything.
And it's also, I think what you mentioned is a beautiful thing of like, the impact that you can have and like what you can create, and you can do it being yourself. But also we're in this age of YouTube where like the simplicity of it, that this like technology that we literally all have in our pockets, just walking around in our daily lives, you could pull that out and record and create this thing off the back of it.
Yeah.
You know, I want to get into like your initial moments, your first moment with YouTube, because I think for so many of us, and for me, there was like a huge mental hurdle to even like post.
Yeah.
And so if I was a fly in the wall, kind of all those years back when you started your channel, and I just observed you and like your life leading up to that first moment of posting a video, like what was going on? What was the context?
Yeah, so it's a fun story, and it was serendipitous and on accident really, but it was during COVID, and my start date for my consulting job had got pushed back. So I had this kind of extra time at home. You know, I went home to LA to be with my parents before moving to New York in the middle of the pandemic. And I had all this time, and kind of as I did when I was a kid, I wanted to do something, and ideally something that was revenue generating, because I think it's more fun that way. And so I started reselling my own clothes. So came home from college, had a bunch of stuff I just knew I probably wasn't going to wear again. Thought, oh, maybe I could sell this online for like $15. And so I started making little sales here and there, and I got really, really into it. And kind of long story short, I grew that a bit, like where I was making a few, like $3,000 a month doing that. And I was like, that's kind of cool. Was thrifting clothes, reselling them. And the way that I learned how to do all this was through YouTube videos, kind of what brands sold really well, what thrift stores kind of seemed to have the best inventory, that kind of stuff, and what platforms to sell them on. And as I watched those videos, I thought to myself, oh, that looks fun. I want to do that. I want to make a video, but put my own twist on it. And I think I could make them even better or different in this way. And so that was my first video, was how I made, I think the title is like how I made $2,700 per month in quarantine reselling on Poshmark.
I actually have how I made $2,700 on Poshmark in only 2 months in quarantine.
Amazing. Nice. Yes. Okay. I was close. But that was my first video. And so that's how I entered. Very, very niche. I told my story a little bit in that video. I think I realized that giving a bit of my background and where I went to school and whatever would give me a little bit more credibility, or make it a little bit more interesting and watchable. But that was my first video. And reselling was the niche that I entered with and continued with for a few months before I realized, oh, wait, I'm way more obsessed with YouTube than I am with reselling. Let me broaden the topics that I talk about here. And then I did about 5 months in, started talking about consulting and what it was, why I was going into it, even though I hadn't started yet, just explaining what the job was, because it's kind of a black box for a lot of people. And my plans to move to New York, and I was just having a lot of fun with it, kind of throwing everything at the wall, seeing what worked. But reselling was the niche that I entered. Yeah.
Do you remember, like, what did the process even look like of creating videos in those kind of early phases? Because I think to a lot of people listening, I think because we see so much great content on YouTube, in your mind, it creates this like really high bar of what you have to produce to create.
Yeah.
And I think that bar and that perfectionism can cause a lot of procrastination. and people never end up posting. But it sounds like for you, it was just like this fun experience. And so walk me through that, like that process of even making a first video. Okay, I have to speak with you guys for a quick minute. I'm going to make a prediction that if you're watching this video, you have probably thought about starting your own business or side hustle at some point. And often when you're in that situation, the toughest thing to do can be to figure out where to start and what to build. I know this because I've been there personally. And so the sponsor of today's episode is going to help you with that. And that's Your First Dollar. A few months ago, we had an entrepreneur called Rob Oliver come on the show and break down how there are 20-year-old kids right now that are making thousands of dollars a month as a TikTok shop affiliate. And so many of you are interested in that episode with Rob that I wanted to share more practical advice about it. And so Your First Dollar is Rob's community that teaches you how to make $10,000 a month in profit as a TikTok shop affiliate. Literally right now, they have hundreds of members that have gone from complete e-commerce newbies to earning $10,000 a month on TikTok shop. And when you join Your First Dollar, it's not just that you're getting lessons. You're also getting access to top coaches, daily live calls, and a supportive community. And you can complete everything right from your phone. And so if you're ready to get started on that side hustle, on that business on TikTok shop, and learn how to become a top affiliate, go to the link in my description and join Your First Dollar today. Your future self will be so grateful. Okay, quick break. One of the things that has always tripped me up about investing, be it in stocks or crypto, is just how much is going on. The prices are changing, new information is always coming out. And so it's been difficult for me to keep track until I started using the sponsor of today's episode, public.com. Public is the app where you can invest in everything: stocks, options, bonds, crypto. What really sets Public apart, though, is they give you all of the tools you need to make informed investment decisions. Their built-in AI tool, Alpha, doesn't just tell you if an asset is moving up or down, it tells you why the asset is moving. So you can actually understand what's driving your portfolio's performance. And Public is a FINRA-registered, SIPC insured, US-based company with a great customer support team. And when you fund your account, you can do it in 5 minutes or less at public.com/Callum. And when you do that, you can get up to $10,000 when you transfer your old portfolio. So that's public.com/Callum. This was paid for by Public Investing. Full disclosures are in the podcast description. Let's get back to the episode.
It's not that different from how I make them today. Like, I still film, like I said, everything on my phone. I think that very first video, I scripted out. I can't remember if it was word for word. I think it probably was, just so I would feel more prepared and whatever. But I had like a really shitty tripod at home. It actually might have been my dad's, because I definitely wouldn't have bought a tripod at that point. It was one of my dad's tripods, and I just, like used duct tape to set up my phone, and I knew the quality wasn't going to be amazing like these, cinematic YouTubers, but I knew that what I was saying, or at least maybe delusionally, I thought what I was saying was interesting enough to still make a video, even if the special effects weren't there or the bells and whistles. And I was right. I mean, not to sound too braggadocious, but to this day, it's really not that different. Yes, I've gotten better at filming different angles and making the story come together in a nicer, better way. But that was all through just doing. You learn by doing. I have so many friends who talk to me about wanting to start a channel, but they don't have this camera, or they don't even know where to start with the audio. It's like, neither did I. You do it and you figure it out. I mean, you set your camera up, you have a vlog, or a script rather, and an idea of what you want to say, and then do that for 5 years over and over and over again. You'll get a lot better at it. And so that's almost to a fault. I've talked to my friends about this, kind of people who are on the really, really, do and go side versus really think about it first. And there are so many virtues to both, but for better or for worse, I certainly fall on the do side. And so if I'm excited about something, I'll just do it and I'll figure it out. I
think especially because you're right, there's definitely pros and cons to each side. Mm-hmm. I think especially in the beginning of doing something, you need that do.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to be perfect. If anything, most of it is going to be imperfect, and you're going to look back on it and be like, probably would have done that a bit differently. Mm-hmm. But I think one of the things that I've learned, because even in my conversations with people that want to do YouTube, or like, even if it's not YouTube, posting on TikTok or posting on Instagram, you start to understand how powerful the mind is. And like, I felt this firsthand, which is your brain will come up with the wildest and just different reasons why you can't do the thing.
Yeah.
And in that moment, they all feel logical. They all feel real, you know, oh, but what if my employer sees this video that I do? It's like, well, in the beginning, most people aren't really going to see your content. Your brain comes up with so many excuses of why you can't do the thing.
Yes.
And so, and it's interesting because it's like, you never know where that video is going to go.
Right.
And so even for you in that beginning stage, do you remember what was some of the early response? Like, what was the performance even of some of these early videos?
Yeah, they were low for sure. I posted my very first video on my personal Facebook, my personal Instagram, like non-public, to like my college friends and my high school friends, because how else would I get my first views, you know, besides to push them out to my friends and family. And so that's exactly what I did. And so the first video actually got, you know, a few hundred views for that reason. Because people from middle school that I haven't seen in 15 years or whatever, aging myself, but yeah, probably saw that thumbnail and thought, oh, that's kind of weird. That's different. Let me click on that and see. And that gave me a view. You know what I mean? I was just like shameless about it. And so that's how I got my first views. And then a couple of my friends were especially supportive and watched every video and gave it thumbs up. And then within the reselling community, which was the niche that I entered in, I think a great way to kind of grow on YouTube at the beginning is to find other creators who are in the same niche, also really small, and you support each other. And it was genuine too. Like, I was in a group chat with this group of girls who were also reselling and commented on each other's videos, you know, gave the thumbs up, just really supported each other. And that's kind of a great way to grow in the beginning and chip away a little at a time as you gain a bigger audience. But yeah, those first videos were, you know, got peanuts worth of views. And I've privated a lot of the reselling ones now just because it's so different than what I make now. Yeah. With a few exceptions. I have some old cringe things there for sure. But yeah, no, it didn't get much. And that's how it goes until that changes, you know, until you have your first, I guess I had a first mini viral. I mean, it certainly wasn't viral, but like we're talking one that got thousands of views rather than hundreds of views. And then I had my first viral video, and it's like a stepwise function. It just gets bigger and bigger from there. And those big videos kind of, you know, so. Yeah.
You know, because it was great even just like preparing for this episode, because you have so many like Q&As and vlogs where like you break down parts of your story. Yeah. And I'm like, this is making my job like a lot easier.
I'm so glad.
But three of the things that you mentioned when you were giving advice to people right in the beginning, you said, choose a niche you genuinely care about. That was number one. Number two is promote your first video everywhere, even if it feels embarrassing. Number three was comment on other YouTube videos strategically. There we go. Yeah, pretty much just said that minus the first part I didn't mention, but entering a niche that you care about. Because I think it's easy to look on YouTube and see what's working for others and think, oh, I want to do that because I want to get those views. I want what that person has. But if it's not a topic you genuinely know a lot about, care a lot about, it will be so unsustainable for you to continue making videos about it. And so, yeah, that's why reselling was obvious for me, because it was pretty niche and I loved it so much. I was obsessed with it, and then kind of grew from there and have changed my niche kind of a lot over the years. But that I would stand by that advice. Yeah. No, it's great. Thanks. And then, so you have these first few videos that are in like this reselling niche, and then you kind of get this spike moment. Yeah. From being on Graham Stephan's podcast, Iced Coffee Hour. Yes. Talk to me about that experience. It was an interesting one. I had 400 subscribers at the time. I had just started a couple months prior, and I was, I had mapped out what my growth rate looked like, and I was looking at hitting my 1,000 subscribers a couple months later, but things were going well, and I had this kind of reseller community niche, but so I was really into it. But one day I realized, a good way to grow is to comment on other YouTubers' videos and leave a genuine comment, or at least something funny, not just self-promotion, Yeah.
And Graham Stephan was someone I'm super into personal finance to this day. And so I watched a lot of his videos and kind of caught on to what his slogans were and things that he kind of repeated in his videos. And I left a comment on one of them saying, like smash the like button, grabbed the popcorn. I don't know, something like that. And he saw it, DM'd me asking if I wanted to come on the iced coffee hour. And I did. And yeah, kind of long story short, it was by the end of the week that went live, I had 2,000 subscribers. And then I think by the time it kind of tapered off, I had like 5,000, which, having those numbers early on is crazy. And even still, the way when I do talk about this with folks who ask me about that experience, net positive experience for sure. Like, how cool is it to just get an influx of subscribers and be able to monetize, 2 months or however many months before I was, hoping to on my own, really. And kind of, it's nice to get a little lift. Like, there's no doubt about it. However, I did realize even then that I back to my advice of like needing to make videos about something you actually love, because if you don't, it won't be sustainable. And so all the folks who came over from Graham were pretty squarely in the personal finance niche, or that was their favorite kind of content. And so I as much as I love that kind of content too, I knew it wouldn't be the only focus. And so I realized that I would need to make videos that I wanted to make, not just videos that catered to this new audience that came over from Graham. And so I did that, and I would lose subscribers here and there that came over from Graham because I just wasn't the kind of stuff they watch. And then it took another year afterwards to really gain my own real audience that came for my consulting content and whatever else have you. So while it was a really great perk and little boost at the beginning, it came with those kind of, I don't know if it's even a downside, but it came with those realizations that I would still need to forge my own path.
Yeah.
So.
I think one of the things with content creation and even building kind of your audience and your brand as a creator, you go through these interesting psychological almost evolutions, right? Which is when you get this spike moment from being on Graham's show, it's like, yes, you're getting subscribers. There's also a validation to that. And there's also I think as creatives, we have a lot of dreams and aspirations. And so it's this cool moment, especially in the beginning where you're that you're not used to, of okay, people are starting to find out about me.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious for you at that time, what's the feeling on an emotional level? How are you even processing it? How do you feel at the time?
Oh, incredible. There's no doubt about it. Seeing those numbers jump up so rapidly in just a couple days, what's the word I'm looking for? It was incredible. Yeah. There's an even stronger word that it's not coming to mind right now, but in getting the comments and being able to respond and having people watching what I took the time to create. To this day, the reason I love YouTube is that was kind of emblematic of that time, and feeling, like you said, validation and wow, people are here for a reason. And even though some of these people are just here for Graham and I know they'll drop off, I still am retaining a decent amount of them and they seem to be into it. So that's cool. So it was, I was elated. It was really, really awesome.
And then it's and this is what I love about YouTube, right? Which is you have that high and then you also have that realization of but they actually came for this thing.
Yeah.
And if going back to that topic of you being yourself and how important that is, that topic is not really emblematic of where you want to go.
Yeah.
And so it's this interesting psychological thing of okay, there's still more work to do. And you even mentioned that it took you kind of a year.
I checked my analytics. It was a full year because I was how long did it take me, after having that huge spike from Graham, how long until I found my own voice kind of and got my next handful of or few thousand subscribers myself. And it was a full year. So it took time, a lot of trial and error and kind of talking about different things. And it took time.
I think that you can give a really interesting kind of vantage point and perspective for people is I think there are people that are listening that maybe they've had that first viral, they kind of went from this experimentation phase where they were throwing different things at the wall.
Yeah.
And then one of those experiments kind of went.
Yeah.
And I've heard it from people that they've had kind of a a viral moment where like thousands of people, maybe it's not super viral, but it's like a moment that's a spike.
Yeah.
And then they have that realization of like, I don't want to create videos in that niche though. I was speaking to someone recently that she had her first viral moment. She made like an NFT video. She was like, I don't want to make NFT videos. And now you have like this really crypto NFT audience that like expecting that. And so I'm kind of curious your advice, because you've navigated it very well and you kind of stuck through that period of like almost having to disappoint those people so that you can find your true like tribe.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, talk about that.
Yeah, it's, well, that's interesting. This happens a lot, and I'm happy to be talking about it. It's a kind of a specific question, but it's so real for YouTubers. I think it depends on the person. I think some folks might be happy to go all in on that thing that works and that feels viral. Maybe that'll be fulfilling for them. I knew for me it wouldn't be, but I'm still a business person. I still understand, growth, and that if I create a video that seems to work now and then, that will probably be helpful to, to feed those or to keep those certain subscribers happy. And so I think where I landed was, I don't even know if it was in the middle, because it wasn't. It was definitely more towards making things that I really wanted to. But I think that if I had to give advice, I would say, unless it's something you really hate talking about, I would feed it a little bit, like maybe make a couple more videos about it, but in a way that you enjoy, because not all things have to be all or nothing. I think an example is, I went on Graham's podcast, got all these personal finance people, but my next video after going on Graham's podcast was sort of a hybrid of the two, where it was about reselling, but it took a much more personal finance approach than my previous videos. In that I remember analyzing my sell-through rate and kind of got down to the penny how much I was making per hour, and really taking like a Ford Model T assembly line business model approach in that video, and that was kind of the hybrid of like reselling, but also more from the sort of businessy personal finance perspective. And so I think it's fun and good to do that too. And I would still say broader advice though to most people would be, you do have to find something that you really like making, because it just, that's part of why you're making YouTube videos, is that it's fun and it's something that's creatively fulfilling for you and hopefully valuable to the audience as well. But I do stand pretty true to making things that are something you want to make. Yeah.
And I think it's like one of the things that I appreciate about you and your content is like the mix of the creativity with the strategy. And I think that it's interesting, because I think a lot of people, when they end up in that situation where they go viral for something they don't want, the next video or the reaction is like, it's very knee jerk, and it's like, put out a vlog or something, or like do something completely different that then doesn't speak to that audience.
Yeah.
And so I like that approach of like, okay, even though this isn't strictly speaking the area that I want to be, is there a way that I can combine my personal interest, but then still have moments and like a tone and value in the content that would appeal to this audience that is like tuned into me.
Right.
And then like a part of that audience, you'll be able to carry over into what becomes your personal interest.
Exactly. And I like to think that's what I've continued to do to today. I try to, at least, where folks who came over to me for my consulting content, of course you're going to get, like, I'm going to get some drop off there, but I like to think that a lot of them, from what I can tell in the comments and people that I meet in the streets, they still like watching my videos, because even though it's much more entrepreneurship, New York City, living, kind of healthy lifestyle, I've now started talking about more, even though it's that focus rather than like pure consulting, I still try to incorporate smart lifestyle or personal finance or business-esque elements in my videos that they can still, find nuggets of value there. And then maybe they also hopefully start to enjoy the New York City lifestyle stuff too. And so exactly, kind of finding that through line that hopefully appeases a lot of your audience, but is also something you enjoy making. Finding that like symbiosis is a great place to be. Yeah, no, it's so good. It's so good. Okay. One of the things I heard you mention in a video, you said, I think you referred to this as like phase 3 in your content journey. You said from February 26, 2021 until December 18th, 2021, which was a 295-day period,
I gained 12,176 subscribers. And what I did in this period, I analyzed my competitive advantages. I started making videos about my Ivy League experience, my consulting job, which led to organic growth of my subscriber base because I was actually delivering value in my videos. And so I wanted to talk about those two things, because I think that for anyone that's gotten like a little bit of success on YouTube, but wants to get to the point where they have 25,000, 30,000 subscribers and they're really starting to get going. I think those 2 points that you mention are so key and so good, which is you found your competitive advantage and you started to understand how to deliver value in your videos.
Yeah.
Can you talk about, let's start with the competitive advantage, because I think that's something that's difficult even to kind of stumble upon or to find. For
sure. And yet it's essential. I think that a lot of people might not realize it, but you are better than the average person at something. Everyone is. And it can be the most specific, weird thing, but there's probably a niche for that on YouTube, which is why YouTube is so great. But I think that in exercise, everyone who wants to be on YouTube or who's at that point, like you said, where you're kind of gaining a little bit of momentum and want to keep going, I think everyone should go through the exercise of really, really nailing down what your competitive advantages are, unfair advantages. I know there's a book written about this. I haven't read it, but I know Ali Abdaal talks about it a lot, where my understanding is that it's basically like finding out what is it that you have, whether it's where you went to school, what you do for work, what your weird hobby is that you're really good at. Could be an infinite amount of things, but really finding out what makes you special, what makes you different than the average person. And hopefully that it's something that you enjoy talking about or analyzing, really, really leaning into that, because that's where you're going to stand out. You know, it's simple. It makes logical sense. So figuring out your competitive advantage is, I think, essential. And then I realized, and this is a good example of videos that I made that weren't necessarily like my passion, but that I knew I had an advantage in. And that was talking about how I got into Wharton Business School, what I did in high school leading up into that, my internships, you know, those things. And that is where I got my first group of my own audience, my first mini viral moment, where it was, like I said, thousands of views instead of hundreds. And that was, and I realized that would probably get clicks. I did a ton of research on the landscape beforehand. It looked like, you know, how I got into this school, those videos seemed to do pretty well. And so I did it and it worked. And same with consulting, even though there are a lot of consultants, you know, I thought I could talk about it in this way that was a little bit different or more relatable. And so even if your competitive, that's another piece of advice I guess I'd give, is even if your competitive advantage is something that a lot of people do have, you still have a different perspective. You still have something else to offer on the topic, whether you think you do or not, than the next person next to you, you know? And so finding out how you could tell that story differently is also really important. So that's the competitive advantage piece. And then with the delivering value piece, this is the number one piece of advice I think any creator could benefit from. And that's that the way to grow on YouTube, I think, is to consistently deliver value. And I think that people might get caught up on value. You know, they might think that that's like a really, really hard thing, as in hard as in very specific, like here's a formula or, you know, something in personal finance or in mathematics. Like that's what people think is value or teaching, but it can be entertainment, or it can be telling a similar story, but differently in your own way. And so I recognize that value is kind of a loose term, but if you're doing it differently, first, or better, those are kind of the buckets that I think of. Like you're delivering value. Does that make sense? It's kind of a hard thing to articulate, but I guess an example is, that I talk about a lot is, especially when you're first starting on YouTube, you know, if you go on a California road trip, someone might have the instinct to post California road trip vlog. Or if you're starting out on YouTube, but you have no subscribers, I would highly recommend making it like 10 best things to do on a California road trip instead of California road trip vlog. Because until someone knows who you are, they don't care to click on that video. You know, no one wants to see your vlog. They don't know who you are. It's not even rude. It's just it's the truth of things. And so if you frame it in a way like, here are the 10 best things, someone knows what they're going to get when they click on your video. You're teaching 10 things, but you can still do it in your fun way. So it's sort of back to what we were saying with finding something that you enjoy making, but also that's delivering value. Does that make sense?
Yeah. You know what? We could we could talk about this stuff for like hours.
Totally.
Because like the psychology element of YouTube, and this is something I had to learn it very much in like the podcasting niche. But I think it actually applies in like any form of content, especially for YouTube, which is, I think what a lot of people do, and it's something that I did in the beginning, and this is the way that I phrase it. I think that they create like they're celebrities. And so what I mean by that is they create in a way that like the audience already has an interest in them. So for example, like if LeBron James was to start a YouTube channel right now, he can come up with a title like, I don't know, 24 hours in New York or something.
It would get millions
of views.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I think but I understand it so much because it's what I did when I started, which is like, a lot of the times when we first creating, we're modeling our favorite creators.
Yes.
Who tend most of the time to be hugely popular and already successful in the field. So the way that they create like celebrities. They'll have a title like, I don't know, 24 hours in LA, or, you know, like basically just sharing their experience because they know that people are already tuning in for them.
Right.
And so they create from that vantage point. And so I think that advice that you give, which is like, not only does there have to be a value in your videos, even in like the packaging of it, like the episode, like the video title and the thumbnail, it has to like immediately communicate that value to someone.
Right.
And I think the thing that you said that's so good is like, I think value is a very overused like term. And so people take it very literally when they think that someone needs to watch your video and be able to take something like directly, which they then apply in their life. And that is valuable, but it's one type of value.
Right.
And I think what you mentioned, which is so good, is like entertainment is also probably the biggest reason why people watch videos. And then the other thing that I was going to add on to what you said is connection. Like that, like if we're being real about it, like when I was watching your vlogs, like your New York City vlogs, there was a sense of connection, relatability, comfort in like, I want to move to New York and I get to watch someone else experiencing New York and giving their perspective and sharing what restaurants they like and their experience and where they go. Yeah, I think it's so good what you mention in that.
Thank you. I'm glad you felt that when watching them. That's good to hear. Because sometimes I even forget that is a whole side of value. Because I think I even fall, prey to taking it quite literally, the value thing. But yeah, if we're being realistic, a lot of the comments are kind of what you just said, which is very flattering, feeling comfort or feeling like they can live vicariously, or they feel come away from this video feeling a little bit more motivated or just happier, in a better mood. That is all like very real value. I do think it's a little harder to take off from that vantage point at the beginning, because to be able to make videos that really lean on that type of value, I think it helps to already have, an established presence. But it's possible. I would still probably recommend starting from the more literal standpoint of, at least, I don't know, maybe that's just because that's my own experience and so I'm biased, but from my other friends that I've seen kind of grow over the years as well, the main videos that took off for them were something that were a bit more literal, but also incorporated the more the softer aspects of value too. So maybe it's a combination of the two. But
I actually think you're correct, which is like in the beginning, it's easier when you can just give people the direct value. Yeah. And then over time, especially if it's a good experience, like that's almost how you get the click and the initial interest. Right. And then as you're building, they're like, oh, I actually just like Taylor. Yeah. And then that's when you can then do the vlogs and you can do that sort of like, it's more of an experience. They're kind of coming into your world. Yep. You know what, there's one thing, because I want to get back to, the consulting and like basically how you manage that transition of being, you were like almost like part-time creator and consultant, and like how you manage that transition from being part-time creator to full-time creator. But before we do, just one thing that I think will be so useful for people, and I think to you have like the strategy mind, like I can tell, so it comes easy, but I know some people don't naturally think like this straight away. You spoke about kind of almost like the research component and like studying the niche and understanding almost how to position things and what videos to make, with the view of like, I want to go viral. Like I want that first spike moment. And so a question, and like, maybe you can even share your approach, but just an interesting question I had for you is, do you almost think that, can you like prepare for virality? Like, can you almost, as a creator, engineer virality through like just studying the competition and the market? Like, give me your perspective on that.
Yeah. So I didn't exactly do that, but I do absolutely think you can. The reason I say that is because I know famously, like Mr. Beast and Ryan Trahan and these other huge creators, I know were in a group chat with each other years ago. Maybe they still are, I don't know. But they were in a group chat that I think they named like 10 million view ideas, where they would just bounce ideas off each other on videos that they thought would get, as the name suggests, 10 million views. And so those creators are famous for studying and succeeding at virality specifically. It's not, and I took a much softer approach than that, but to answer the question, like flat out, yes, I think you can. I think you can plan to go viral, and not saying it would work every single time, but if you really study the landscape and see what works and put your own take on it, I think you can. But the way that I think I did it was that, but a much softer approach, I suppose, where I still checked the box of it being something that I wanted to talk about or was kind of excited to talk about at least. But yeah, my literal approach, I would open up incognito windows. And so meaning like I wouldn't be logged into my own YouTube account because, my algorithm obviously feeds me these creators and I want to see what a blank slate would feed me. And then I would look up certain videos or like kind of loose keywords within my own niche, whether it was getting into an Ivy League school or what is consulting. I would see what videos had the most views and then watch the video, kind of see what worked, what the comments said. Like, yeah, I researched a lot. And it's my consulting background. Like consultants are the best people at research. It's true. And just kind of, whether you write it down or it's just subconscious, you start to take in these data points. And then through trial and error of doing it yourself, you realize what works and what doesn't, how you could tweak it next time. And that was my approach. And I did that a couple times. And to this day, even with my vlogs, which are kind of, again, that softer type of value, I do watch videos and if I notice, wow, I really liked the pace of this video, or I really liked how this video did X, Y, Z, I will write it down. I'll write down why I think this video worked. In some cases, I've written down what certain videos, literally by the second, how they're paced. So seconds 0 through 27, intro with punchy music, vlog, sequence of me getting out of bed, whatever it is. And I think I've just refined that over the years to feel like, hopefully my vlogs, which are my biggest videos now, I want them to feel like that 14 minutes or however long went by like that. And so really, really studying, in the case of vlogs, what pacing I think works really well, I've spent a lot of time on. And in the beginning, it was more so, studying what worked well for the more literal value.
Yeah. So. I love it because I never even thought about this because my first job was in consulting as well. So I feel like both of our approaches are like, we kind of have this like analytical, very like structured like approach to like picking apart like a video. And so maybe we can jam on this for a second because I think it would be interesting for people is like almost the components of how you prepare almost to go viral. And I know for me, I do this in podcasting, is I'll do a very similar thing to you. Like I'll know kind of like what topic an episode will be on, and I'll search things in the incognito tab's a good thing. I'll probably actually start trying that.
Awesome.
But the thing that I'm looking for, because I think this is a mistake I've seen people make and I made in the beginning, is they're just looking, when they're trying to find videos to base almost their own video off, they're just looking at the view number as like an absolute like value. It's actually more important like relative. So what I mean by that is I'll actually go into the channel and I'll look at how does this video do compared to all of their other videos. Because you could have a creator that averages 4 million views a video and then the video that you're thinking is great gets 2 million, that's not actually a great video for them.
Right.
And so my mind is keying into outliers.
Outliers, yeah.
And so I'm looking for outliers everywhere. I'm looking for outliers. A video might get 10,000 views, but I'm like, wait, this person usually gets 200.
Right.
But then with this, maybe it was like the thumbnail, the title or whatever. And my mind, very similar to you, my mind is like picking up on the smallest details. Like, how did the video start? How did they transition? What's the thumbnail title? What's the ending? What's the middle bit? What are the hooks?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
totally.
It's like a game almost.
Exactly. And I think it is the best of both worlds if you enter YouTube and also have the analytical mind, because YouTube, I have to give them credit. They give you so much data. I love YouTube Studio. I spend so much time in my analytics, and also through the trial and error of your own videos, seeing, oh, that intro dragged out too long because I lost, 5% retention, like 5% of my audience dropped off at this point, going to cut that out next time. And so if you see it as a game and really genuinely enjoy that, I think you're also set up even more for success. Which, yeah, it sounds like we both enjoy that process of it. It's really fun. What
are you looking at in YouTube Studio? I'm curious, like, what does your mind pay attention to?
A few things. One, I do look at retention. And so this is like the graph that Mr. Beast talks about so much. And he just really hammers on, by the way, like Mr. Beast's model is not my model, but for better or for worse, he has a lot of YouTube knowledge, the most YouTube knowledge, one might argue. And so he always talks about retention, and which is basically the percentage of your video, just for the viewers who don't know, the percentage of your video that your audience watches. So if you have a 10-minute video and, most people are sticking until the 9-minute mark, that's really, really good. But if they drop off after 2 minutes, that's only 20% retention. That's not great. It tells YouTube, oh, audience basically is getting bored by this video after only 20% of it. I'm not going to push this video out to new people. And so really benchmarking against your own videos what a good retention mark is, and then trying to match that. So I really look at that. I look at retention and see, oh, did people seem to get bored during this time? Or on the more positive side of things, did they watch like this whole section? So that way, instead of the line decreasing, it stays relatively flat. I go for that. And that's where pacing comes in. Like with vlogs, I've like to think I've figured out, and I'm still figuring out, but a really great balance of talking and music and B-roll that keeps people kind of engaged and not getting bored, but also without being too in their face, And so that's one thing I look at. Other things I look at are basically if I have any peaks or something that stands out, I need to understand why. And so sometimes it's obvious, like, yeah, that video is popping off. That's why I'm getting more subscribers right now. But sometimes there's like a dark horse in the race that I'm not expecting to be the driver of that growth that's happening over there. So it really happened to me 2 days ago. I got a few thousand subscribers in one day, which I was like, well, what's that? Because it was more than my average. And so I clicked into it thinking it was going to be this vlog that I had about 10 months ago that kind of blew up and has been a really nice source of growth since then. But it wasn't that video, it was something else. And so I went to the other video and then dug into those analytics and just saw it was being pushed out to a new audience. And so if you're into the data, YouTube gives you so much. And I just try to understand the sources of things. Retention, I care a lot about. Click-through rate, of course, is important. So like understanding if the thumbnail will capture, you get it. Like how many people are clicking on this video. If it's lower than average, maybe I should change the thumbnail, even if it's something I like, audience doesn't like it. And so A/B testing, I think, is a great feature that YouTube has as well. But I'm rambling. Those are the things that I look at.
No, and it's so good. And the thing I love that you mentioned, it's why I think throughout, but especially in the beginning, I think the research and like the keywords and even how your video is positioned and like framed, and also to your initial point of just creating content that has value is, and this is always like, it's always a lesson to me. Like sometimes in life you have to learn the same lesson over and over again. Yeah. But sometimes you will post a video and out of the gate, it will not do that well.
Right.
And you will be like, as a creator, because we put so much time and like effort and hours and like, we put like our soul into these videos.
Yes.
And then it's like, no, and you don't do it just for the response, but obviously like you want people to like it and to get a response.
Right.
And so sometimes initially it doesn't perform. And then YouTube is such a beautiful platform where like 3, 4, 5 weeks, sometimes even months.
Yeah.
Like it will just start spiking. You're like, what the heck is going on?
Yeah.
But it's because they finally placed the audience for your video. They finally found the audience for it. And obviously like the titles and everything come into that.
Yeah. It's so great. That happened to me. The exact example I was just talking about was a video from months ago. So yeah, it's so cool.
Yeah. You know what? Okay. So we kind of gave people, at this point in time and from these learnings, you were at like 25,000-ish, 30,000-ish subscribers. And then it felt like you had this growth towards 100,000, which I want to get into, and some of the things that you were doing there, because I think you really started to go deep into like the vlogs and all of that stuff. But before we do, like even at the point where you had 25,000, 30,000 subscribers, which is a lot. Like starting out, when you're starting out, you're like 30,000 people subscribe to my stuff. Like that's a crazy amount. Give me the insight into the reality of your life though, because you're still, I'm assuming at this time, working in consulting. What is like the feeling? Are you like, I'm ready to quit and go all into this YouTube thing? Are you just like, I'm going to keep doing both? Like, what is the emotion at this time?
The emotion, it's a great question. I was absolutely still balancing the two at that point. And my natural level of, I'm wary to say risk aversion, because I've refined that over the years. I don't think it's risk aversion. I think it's my preference to take calculated risks rather than like being rash about it.
Yeah.
And so I think at that time it was insane excitement, because I think I might have said in that video, or maybe it's another one, where that is almost the most, no, it was a different one, a more recent one, where I think the most fun part or time of YouTube is like your journey to 100,000. I mean, the numbers now still blow me away, and like, I want that million so bad, but like getting to 100,000 is, I think it's largely honestly because YouTube gives you that plaque at 100,000, which is, we all want that. It's like, what a great incentive. So smart of YouTube. But yeah, when you're just kind of, it's before you know what you don't know, and it's when you're getting some validation. So it's like that combo of things that makes it so exciting. And what I mean by that is once you get to a certain level, or you've been doing it for long enough, you kind of realize your own limitations and what you're still not super good at. And so in some way that's almost like limiting. But when you're still kind of delusional and you don't have that sense yet, but you're getting the views, it's like, whoa, this is great. And so just like pure excitement, but still very much in my job, and really didn't even have my sights yet on, well, I had my sights on it, but I didn't have any feeling of like, oh, I'm leaving consulting. I think at that point I was only, probably 4 months into consulting by the time I had like 25,000 subscribers, 4 or 5 months in. So it was still, I was brand new to the job. I was actually excited to be in consulting for the first year, you know? And so I was excited about YouTube, but for the time being, it was this like cool thing I was doing on the side that I could talk to my colleagues about, but that was about it. Yeah.
I'm curious, after that first year of consulting and like the initial excitement of just having like a job and like being young kind of subsides, did it feel like you were living like a double life?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, not in the sense that it was a secret. I wasn't Hannah Montana, because people knew about it. It was on my resume. Like people knew that was my thing, was my YouTube channel. And so in that sense, it wasn't a double life because it wasn't a secret. But the fact that I would go home from my consulting job if I still had a few hours in the evening and worked on this other job, and then on the weekends, I would edit my videos. Like I did totally feel like I had a double life. And I had the foresight to start a public Instagram the day that I started my YouTube channel, just because I don't even know if maybe that's revisionist history, having the foresight. That's maybe patting myself on the back too much. But like, I just knew I didn't want the public to see my posts from 8th grade, you know? Yeah. And so I have this public facing Instagram, and then my other one that like all my friends from my life, my college and everything follow. That feels kind of double lifey where, yeah, I don't know how to describe it. I still actually feel that way. Because this is kind of a different topic, but I do keep most of my life, honestly, I keep a lot of it very, very private. And that's what feels double lifey rather than the consulting and YouTube, because that was like I was talking about consulting on YouTube and I was talking about YouTube at my consulting job. So they were kind of meshed.
Intertwined.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's more so what I decide to keep private and not, that feels more double lifey.
Yeah. You know, we spoke about that, those quiet moments, especially in the beginning of feeling and just knowing yourself that consulting was not like the path. It wasn't the ultimate path for you. And so I'm curious, as you're starting to get this traction and YouTube, and you're like, you spoke about the delusion and the excitement and just everything that comes with it, the creativity, and you're doing it being yourself. Talk me through those moments. Like, is the feeling of like, okay, I'm not meant to be doing this thing, is it growing? Like, is it becoming like an increasing pull?
Yeah, it didn't, for the whole time that I was at Oliver Wyman, my first consulting job, I didn't feel it too much. I was just excited about YouTube. When it really, really hit was the time between the two consulting jobs. So I interviewed for BCG while I was at Oliver Wyman, got the offer, and then quit the first job, and then had 4 months between the two to do, it was a summer, which was great. I had the summer to myself to just do YouTube like full time before starting at the second consulting firm. And during that time of doing YouTube effectively full time, that's where I was like, oh, this could be my life. If I went all in, I could do this every day. And I was loving it. And I was excited to wake up and work on my videos. And like Monday was and kind of still is my favorite day of the week in a lot of ways. And like, who can say that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's when it was when I started at BCG where it was really strong. Also because BCG was even more demanding than my first job, largely because of the economy, not because of the firm necessarily. But a lot by that time, COVID had kind of, not recovered, but like businesses were hiring consulting firms again. Things were crazy. My hours were tough. And that's where I started to resent the job, unfortunately. So it became a much louder force internally once I was at the second job.
Yeah. I'm curious that, because I think that's fascinating. That 4-month period where it's almost like, back home, we call it like, right before you leave school, I think, to go to like college. College for us isn't university. It's like there's 2 years before university, and some people go to college.
Oh, interesting.
Is what we'll call it. And before you go to college, though, you'll have like a period in the school term, you'll do work experience. And so the way that I think about like it's almost like you got like 4 months of work experience being a full-time YouTuber.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious to understand, like, was that a strategic thing? Like, was that like you made sure the dates kind of lined up in a way, or that was just pure spontaneity? Like,
it's funny. I actually don't think I've talked about this. It was very strategic.
Okay.
I mean, I was lucky in that I think if I remember the timing correctly, I think I would have had a month it was, but I did tell and they were cool about it, to their credit. Like I told BCG that I had this YouTube channel, and forgot exactly how I worded it, but to be totally honest, I told HR, I'm trying to get my business on the side set up to a point where it can, I think I said run itself, which is insane. Because a YouTube channel can't run itself. Yeah. But I think I said I'd love to get it set up to a point where it can kind of has its own legs without needing as much of my time. So I would love to push back my start date a couple extra months. And I did that 2 times. I think I couldn't get away with it on the 3rd time, but it allowed me more time. Yeah. So but they were cool about it. It's
like genius in a way, because I think about that human being that's listening, that's had, they've put out some videos and there's traction behind it, but there's still, and I remember this feeling so vividly in my life, which is like, you've gotten the clarity that ultimately I want to get here. Like I want to get to the point I'm just full-time doing this.
Yeah.
But your reality is not that yet.
Yeah.
And so there's like this kind of like murky period where you're like trying to get from this place over to here. And so it's genius in a way of like this 4-month period of time where you just get to focus so exclusively, because I think in that focus is where so much of the progress happens.
Yes.
And so I'm curious for you, like even you open up this 4-month period of time, what was even your mindset of like, how you're going to pursue YouTube? Because all of a sudden you've gone from part-time to full-time. And it's like, how do you navigate that? How do you make sure that your growth is still going up and you're still inspired and you're in routine? And like, I'm just curious your mindset around an approach.
At that point, I love the question. At that point, it was almost like, how was I going to approach consulting? Because once I did YouTube full time, I knew I was going to, like, I knew I was going to go back to that, at least to give it a shot. But I did still want to go back into consulting at least for another year and have that on the resume and, you know, and be at this really prestigious firm. And so I still had some of those values, but I think it was more like, okay, how long am I going to stay back in consulting before? It was more so thinking about like how to balance those two, if that makes sense, for like my final year of doing it. If that answers the question. I mean, it's kind of flipping it on its head. Yeah. I think that I hit YouTube really hard during those 4 months. That was my fastest pace of growth. And that gave me the insight into, to your point, when you really, really are able to focus on something, that's where so much of the growth happens. And to this day, if I go back in my analytics and look at subscriber growth, like the area, the place in the graph where there's the most like area under the curve, that's a way too complicated of a way to put it. But basically when I was having the most subscriber growth was during that time. Cause it was that combination of putting videos out every single week because I didn't hold myself to this crazy standard at the time. I still think they were good videos, but at least I didn't take as long editing them then. And so yeah, I was posting weekly. I was doing all the research at the same time, seeing what videos worked. And so I just knew I had so much fun doing it. I hit 200,000 subscribers the day that I started at BCG. And so it was kind of a sad day. Like I was no longer really excited to go back into consulting. I still knew I wanted to do it and wanted it on the resume and wanted the experience, but yeah, it's kind of a ramble, but hopefully that answers.
What were some of those I'm curious, like what were some of those inflection points, like specific videos where like, because that's kind of what our life is like as creators, right? Like you're kind of just doing your thing in, I don't know, your room or like your world of where you create. And then all of a sudden there's like a certain video that goes millions, or like, what were some of the ones that stick out to you?
Yeah. Well, one is the video that is my most viewed to this day. And I don't know if one will ever pass. It's my very first apartment tour. It has 6 million views now. And it's wild because I posted that and the growth from that was coming while I was on a really tough project. And I remember actually not being able to celebrate or feel happy about the video because I was just at work focusing. So that was kind of like a crazy moment that was muted by work. That's one.
Was that spike immediate? Like, was it like you post it instant?
Yeah, pretty much. It was within a week. I think it had 1 million views within, oh my God, 6 or 7 days, so that one was pretty crazy. And then my first New York City vlog which is my second most viewed video right now. That took a couple weeks, but that was another one that was during that 4-month period of doing it full time. I was like, hell yeah, this is awesome. And then when I was at BCG, I didn't have the focus. Like I wasn't able to put all my time into YouTube. And so looking back at the time, growth was slow. My videos weren't great. They were like, I made videos when I had time, which I didn't have much of. And so they were kind of sit down at home videos that were a bit easier to make. I wasn't out vlogging because that just takes more effort. That was kind of like my slow period. And then it took a took a bit of time after going full time again to kind of get that growth and that momentum back. And that was a tricky period. Trying to think of other moments that really, really stood out to me though.
You know what, just quickly, because you mentioned it earlier. So day one of working at BCG, you hit 200,000 subscribers. Is there not like a quiet thought in your head of like, you've just had this 4-month period of doing the thing that you love, full time. Is there not a quiet thought of like, maybe I just never do this BCG job and I just keep doing what I'm doing?
Yeah, it wasn't even quiet. It was pretty loud. It wasn't quiet. Yes, for sure. And I still knew, like, and I actually don't regret it even now, even with what I have now. I actually don't regret going back. Just, it'd be easy to be like, I should have kept going and focusing full time. I think that at least with where my values were at that time or with what I was prioritizing, I think it made sense to go back and to have this firm on the resume and to get that experience. honestly though, most importantly, I'm glad I went back because I will never, ever have a what if. And I like to very thoroughly weigh all my options. And I think BCG specifically, this is kind of helpful context. It was the firm that once I had my sights set on consulting for my full-time job after I did finance and knew I didn't want to do that, BCG was the firm I wanted to work at. And I got the super day, which is like the final round interview in New York, the fall of my senior year of college. And then they chose one person from Penn, and it wasn't me, but I got the final round. So I was right there. And I think I always had that in the back of my mind, just like, that's the competitiveness in me, I guess. I was like, I was so close. I think if I interview again, I could get it. And then I want to go work there. And so I always had that. And I needed to cross off that box almost, which sounds silly because like, but it's the truth. And I'm glad I did it because now I have no doubt in my mind that I'm doing what I should be doing. And if I hadn't gone, maybe there's a part of me now that would sit here. I don't know, maybe not, but I think so. I think I would wonder, would I have liked BCG more because it is this really prestigious firm and it's the one that I wanted for so long. And yeah, so I went through that mental gymnastics, and for that reason, I am still glad that I went and did it.
Yeah. See, I don't think it sounds silly at all, because I think we spend, especially if you're ambitious and you're a go-getter, you spend so much of your time and your effort and building this expectation to try and essentially reach like the top of this kind of corporate game.
Yes.
And to your point, like I said, I worked in consulting. I went through those interviews. Like BCG is at like the pinnacle of that game. And so I think it's completely understandable. I'm curious though, because you have this expectation that's built up over years of like what being at BCG will be like. How does that expectation then compare to the reality?
Yeah. Well, thank you. First of all, that feels validating that you agree on that. But I think with so many jobs, expectation, this sounds so cynical, but I think that it's true. Expectation hardly ever meets reality in a lot of ways, where even taking at the project specific level, okay, let's say there's this really, really exciting project at my consulting firm for this cool, I don't know, we can make one up, like, I don't know, freaking Red Bull. Like, wow, a project for Red Bull. That sounds so cool and exciting. And then once you actually get into it, let's say it's like a cost cutting, project, then you're just in the numbers and you can't you don't have this zoomed out version at all times of, whoa, my client is Red Bull. That's so cool. It's like, no, you're sitting behind Excel. The reality is that you're sitting behind Excel all day long. And yes, you might get really, really cool perks and get to maybe even travel to, who knows, there are cool aspects, but reality is the day-to-day, as you know, is like behind the computer on Excel, creating PowerPoint decks with a lot of valuable information on them. It's not just like, it's not all fluff the way I think a lot of people paint consulting, but the day-to-day work did not match the exciting collaboration and energetic work that I was hoping to get from consulting. So, yeah. There were parts of BCG that I found really, really inspiring. And like I said, those people work at they're so, so smart and they work at a very high level. And for that reason, it was inspiring in some ways, but it's not where I wanted to be every morning.
I found this quote and I thought this was fascinating, and I personally related with it as well. You said, this was you talking about your time at BCG, final consulting job. You said, the truth is it was grueling. Despite that, until my very last day at the job, I was still desperate to cling on to this job that I didn't even like at this point because it was prestigious. And everything I worked on in my life was to put me on this path to success in the business world. And I think that there's so many, there are different components of even that quote. Even the first part, the truth is it was grueling. I'm curious, what in your mind, what, when I even say that, where does your brain go? Where does your memory go?
Yeah. To not a fantastic place. It was grueling, especially that final project which I think is really cemented in my memory, which the hours were crazy. And like I said at the very beginning of our chat, I just didn't care. I didn't care. I was sitting there on a day today, seeing these people, like I said, left and right, who were just putting seemingly their all into this project. And I was like, I don't want to be here. And that's just not me. What a terrible place to not want to be. You know what I mean? And so I think that what felt so grueling was even more so than the crazy hours and whatever, was that the way I put it is this cognitive dissonance I felt on a day-to-day where what I was doing for work did not align with my values, which was, my values being personal growth, creative fulfillment, working for myself, honestly, like that's what really fulfills me. And so not being able to do that and being at this job that sure does check off some of my boxes, like prestige, I did still care about that's been totally redefined at this point, but at the time, it checked off some of my boxes, but so not that many compared to what YouTube did for me. And so having that misalignment every single day was just like a grueling feeling of discomfort, and it just wasn't great.
You know what? Can you explain that term? Because I actually I read about cognitive dissonance maybe like 6 months ago, a year ago, in a book I was reading. The Diary of a CEO, actually, funny enough, he talks a lot about cognitive dissonance. Can you explain what that means? Because I actually think that that's valuable for people. Yeah,
I think it's the misalignment that you feel between basically what you think and what you feel versus your actions. I think that might be like definitionally not, but that's effectively what it is. And so if you value these things over here, but your day-to-day involves things that like don't check those boxes, you feel this internal discomfort, lack of happiness, and doing that for a long enough time really leads you can lead one down a path of just lack of fulfillment and happiness. And so that's what I felt. But I've heard him talk about that too. So I love Stephen Bartlett.
Yeah. And I think it's actually such an important thing to understand, because I think as humans, we get in these patterns in our life, and it can happen almost like subconsciously without us being fully aware, where we just get misaligned.
Yeah.
And so I think even when I listen to you, it's like the importance of understanding one's personal values and like understanding what is the ideal versus the reality. And I think very rarely, especially when you live in a busy city like New York or like any of these hubs where there's just a lot going on, how often do we reflect on what am I doing on a day-to-day versus like where I want to be?
Right.
And I think that sometimes in life, like you actually need space. Like you actually need some time to reflect, to understand like, wait, the thing that I'm putting my 8 most productive hours, and if you're working consulting in New York, it's more than 8 hours a day.
12.
Is not aligned with personal values and where I'm trying to go.
Right. Yeah. I think it's very easy to slip into that. And especially, like you said, if you're putting that much time into it, you don't have the space and time to reflect like, whoa, this huge misalignment is happening. And that's why I'm unhappy at work. It's a privilege to be able to step back. So many folks can't. Some won't, but a lot just can't. And yeah, it's a very real thing.
Yeah. And then I wanted to take the second part of this. You said, until my very last day at that job, I was still desperate to cling on to it, because up until this point, it was prestigious and I'd worked on it my whole life.
Yeah, I think that it might be, I know I said that, I think it might be a slight misrepresentation of what I felt, or at least doesn't cover the whole picture. I think that I think in some way I was desperate to cling on to, or hadn't really fully let go of this kind of set of priorities or value systems that I thought I really cared about up until that point. Because it didn't take, it took until a few months into doing YouTube full time now, like my job now, where that was like where I was able to throw that out the window, which I'll touch on in a sec. But so I think that it's because I still had remnants of that, where I felt kind of that desperation or like, what am I doing? But the job itself, I feel like I was never really clinging. I don't know. Or like I was never super thrilled to be there. I think I really wanted to be, but just never got there. And so, yeah, I think what I meant, and at least maybe in hindsight, I have more clarity on the subject. I think that the idea of prestige and seeing all of my other friends to this day, for the most part, still in consulting, finance, venture capital, tech, and totally like taking a hard right turn from that. That felt uncomfortable, even though it's what I knew in my gut I should do. It was still like, dang, what did I go to Wharton for? What did I what did I do all these internships for, and really like I said, I have no regrets. And it's because of all the steps that I took that I am where I am now, because I did the trial and error. I know what I want to be doing, but still, I was bound to feel that a little bit. And yeah, I think that's where the desperation kind of came from.
Yeah. Can you talk like on a strategic, almost like practical level? Mm-hmm. Because it sounds like you pretty early on had the clarity that you wanted to do the YouTube thing full time, but then the way that you went about it felt, and you can tell me better than I can say it, but it felt almost like planned and strategic, and like you were hitting certain marks, and then it was the right time.
Yeah. And it's true, but I think it just creates a really nice narrative of, I was the mastermind here. I think a lot of it is just like my risk appetite, which is still pretty heavy, but not, probably not as heavy as yours. And but there's like, there's virtue, and like the most badass entrepreneurs in the world were ones who like went all in from day one, So I think that my approach was, yes, perhaps, or it was practical because I had the double income for a long time. So it de-risked financially and, whatever. But I wouldn't even say it's necessarily the right way, but it was the right way for me. It's what made me feel comfortable, even though I think I knew I wanted to do this thing full time, and especially knew I wanted to do something entrepreneurial full time eventually, but was down to go through the consulting as the stepping stone to get there and kind of get the business chops and all of that. And so the way that I went about it was, by doing both for 3 years. And that's once I finally felt comfortable to jump off, I ultimately had de-risked the situation by being able to grow the YouTube channel while making this income and still growing my resume and consulting and having that to fall back on if I ever wanted to go back into corporate. And so I just really wanted to leave my options open. Or like, I liked knowing that I had options, I guess. And so that's just the route that worked for me.
Yeah, I saw a video you did. I think the title was, and again, I'm going to butcher it. You probably remember it better than me. But you mentioned that you made like $300,000 as a creator. I think it was this year. I don't remember if that was last year or the year even before last year.
I launched that video, 11 months ago.
Okay. I'm curious, like, what were almost the signs? Like if someone's listening and they're thinking like, what's the right time to step away from their job? Like what were the signs or like the metrics? Like was that kind of how you were doing it? Like you were waiting to hit a certain number from YouTube earnings to then be like, okay, I can leave?
Kind of, sort of. I will admit that the final jumping off point really was that last project in consulting where I was like, whoa.
That was just a feeling.
Yeah, yes. But when it came to the income, I knew a couple things. One, I wanted to make sure I was making as much from YouTube as I was from consulting. That's just kind of a benchmark I had in my mind. For a lot of folks, and I know it might be once they make half because they know they can then grow it from, going full time. For me, I wanted to match it. And so I did that, or I hit that mark for about a year, honestly, even a tad longer than a year before I left consulting. Second thing, honestly, even more importantly, was that I wanted to know that my channel would succeed if I no longer was talking about consulting, because that was one of the pillars of my channel of when I really hit my first wave of growth. And so I strategically stopped talking about it. Yes, it was always in the background of my life. People knew I was doing it, but I really, really would not go into any at one point, I just kind of stopped going into details about it and started making other content like about New York and personal finance and just kind of other things, not about consulting. And luckily, my channel still did fine. It didn't tank because I stopped talking about consulting. And so the reason I obviously wanted to run that experiment was because if I left the job that I could no longer talk about, like would the channel tank? Yeah. And thank God it didn't. So those were kind of the two biggest things that I really wanted to check off.
Yeah. It's nice that you kind of have this reassurance of like, your audience is there for you. And I think every creator kind of goes through that period where like, you're not entirely sure. You're like, is it because I can just speak to this experience, or they only like me with this niche? But I think something that you've done pretty masterfully is actually like the niches have evolved. And I saw, there's like videos that you've done recently where you're talking about like healthy living, or like you did a video this week talking about Trader Joe's. Yeah. Like there's like different, it's almost like you almost reach like niche independence. Like you don't really need to just talk about one thing in order for it to perform. Was that like a difficult thing initially when you try these new content kind of types and formats and verticals?
Kinda. Well, thank you, first of all. Yeah, I think that I do still, I know a lot of it might seem random. I actually have a lot to say on this, but I still do try to ease my way in to niches. So it's been a long time now, but starting with New York City vlogs, I actually waited 4 months after I moved to New York to make my first vlog because I wanted to understand the city a little better and kind of study the landscape of what these vlogs looked like. And then the healthy living, since I've gone full time as a YouTuber, I have a lot more time to work out and cook and eat healthy compared to when I was in consulting and ordering Uber Eats every night, and which was expense, which was nice, but but I didn't have as much time to exercise, and so that's just become a lot bigger in my life. And so naturally, I've kind of started here and there talking about it a bit more in my vlogs, and so I am strategic / also just like naturally start weaving these topics in before I make full videos about them. And so it's kind of through that trial and error, as I keep saying, that I start introducing new niches. I will say there are still people who, like, I still get comments there are still subsections of my subscribers who left once, who just wanted to stick around for consulting and who don't like the New York content. And then I have some where if I put out too many New York vlogs, some people will say, Taylor, like, make something different. So I do still get some people, wanting very specific things. But for the most part, I do have a very lovely section of my subscribers who like watching them for me, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Thank you.
And I think one of the things, and you even have videos, like, I encourage people to watch it. You have videos where, like, you're very open and transparent, and even breaking down your earnings as like a creator and like what percentage comes from what. I think one of the things, like, you've been able to built the YouTube career in a way that it's like, it's never really fully secure, but like you're kind of doing it in a way where it's becoming more secure. I think one of the biggest insecurities or like risks that every creator faces, any public facing person that relies on any sort of influence faces, is the idea of, or the risk of backlash or people not liking what you're doing from a content standpoint. And I know that that's something that you've felt. And like, I think for me, and even when I was just thinking about this video, like our conversation in this episode, I really wanted to give people the full picture of what it's like to be a creator. Because you and I can come here with like what's happened, and you so even more than me, and talk about like the views and the subscribers and the lifestyle and like everything, all the good stuff that comes with doing this.
Yeah.
There is another side to doing this. And so I'm curious for you, like, have there been those experiences, those moments of like, you've done something and you faced like that fierce backlash and it's almost like called into question everything?
Yeah.
What comes to mind?
Absolutely. Yeah. Luckily, really just one kind of big thing for me. I mean, every creator, no matter who you are, I think will deal with hate comments. That's the nature of putting yourself on the internet. So I've dealt with those pretty much since very early on. And that's one thing. I think the biggest thing that stands out for me, though, is, and you and I chatted a little bit about some of the details off camera, but I had planned to create a course. And so I, for at that point, 4.5 years, have created content on YouTube, videos like free to consume. They still are. That's why YouTube is such a great platform. And then I get paid from brands, but it costs you nothing extra. It's like, it's a great business model. But I thought at that point, I do still want to be growing and trying new things and seeing what other revenue streams I could add to my business, especially now that I'm full time. I mean, this is my living. And so something that really excited me and still does, but I've had to rethink it a bit, was the course business model. And so I look to Ali Abdaal a lot. I think a lot of YouTube creators probably do. For those who don't know, he's like a doctor, #1 Oxford doctor turned successful YouTube entrepreneur. And he has talked spoke so highly of the course business model where he's come out with a lot of different courses, but it has almost allowed him to not have to, like, to be able to make YouTube videos just for the fun of it and not feel like he has to take on all these brand sponsorships and everything, because he has these other courses that are a great revenue stream for him. And he also just really likes making them. Anyway, to switch from Ali to myself, the idea of creating a course about a specific topic that I know so a lot about and doing it in a long form content, like 10 hours plus of content, is something that really excites me. And so when I was thinking through what kind of course I might want to make, like the obvious thing that comes to me is like how I've built the YouTube channel and how I have grown my different revenue streams, and specifically kind of the money making aspect, which is something that I really, I know money is a taboo subject for a lot of people, but I love talking about money and how to make it as a creator, because it's just cool to me. I mean, it sounds strange, and you and I talked about this, but the way I see my relationship with money is almost, this might sound flippant, but I almost see it as like a game. And honestly, the way that like 6-year-old Taylor saw it as a game where she gathered trash from the beach and wanted to sell it. Like, I just think it's fun. It's a cool thing, and it's real monetary value. So it's like, whoa, this is sweet. But anyways, that's just something that over the years I've learned a lot about, is how to negotiate and make money as a creator. And I think it's where my business background kind of lends itself pretty well. And so I was very excited to be, talking about this again in long form, not unedited, but like very, very long, detailed fashion, which YouTube is not the place to release that. And so, I mean, I have videos on it, but we're talking, again, a lot of content. And so I wanted to make a course on this, and I took about a month off of making videos to really, really write out the script. And I got to a point where I realized, wait, I haven't posted on YouTube in a full month. That's not good. That is my business. That's my favorite thing to do. I should at least let my viewers know what I've been up to, and also try and validate demand, because even though this course is exciting to me, I also don't know how many, like, what percentage of my audience would even be interested in it, because even I know it's a small percentage of my audience that is trying to start a YouTube channel, but who knows, maybe it's enough where it would be worth my time. And so anyways, I realized I should provide an update. So I came out with a video explaining what I was working on and kind of soft launching the course and trying to get an idea of what people might want to hear. And even though I got a lot of course waitlist signups, which was great, the backlash, like the comments I got on that video were like scathing. And I think that in hindsight, it's easy to, or not easy, but in hindsight, it's easier to unpack why that all happened the way it did. I think in hindsight, something I would have done differently was like my first video back not being about the course, like come back with my regular content and then kind of more organically introduce it, rather than it being like a crazy soft launch situation or a standalone video for that. That was a tough time, I'll admit, because they weren't just hate comments, which I'm used to getting. It was like a lot of comments completely misrepresenting my intentions, thinking, comments like, oh, what, you sold out, or quick money cash grab. It's like, first of all, it's anything but quick. Like, creating a course is a daunting amount of work. I barely have even dipped my toes, and I was like, wow, it took a month to write a script, and I feel like I didn't even scratch the surface. But anyways, yeah, I think that the hardest thing a creator can go through is when you make something, as you and I kind of talked about before, you make something with pure intention, or something that you put your heart and soul into, and really just have, it's something you're excited about. And then people assume that you're doing it for the worst reasons. And that's just shitty. So that did happen to me, or like that. Yeah. I mean, grand scheme of things, I'm all good, but that happened, and that sucks.
Yeah. You know what? You spoke about, scathing comments, and it's something, I think if you put yourself out there, and this is just life in general, if you put yourself out there, there's going to be a ton of people that like it and are supportive. There's also going to be some people who are like very negative or opposed to it. I get the sense though from listening to you speak about it, that this time it was different. It felt different. And I think sometimes when we make like comments on the internet, you don't think of like the human on the other side of the comments. Yeah. And so for you, on like an emotional level, how did it hit on like a personal level, to you as a person, to you as a human doing this thing? And like you say, like we even spoke about it right in the beginning, the joy of creating. even when you talk about giving value, I think one of the things that came across to me, like even in the research of this and watching your videos, you've been sharing like lessons and teaching in your videos for a long time. It wasn't like a sudden pivot, like, oh, I'm now the teacher now. Like you were teaching. How did that hit on like a human level?
It was tough. I think that regardless of your profession, even taking YouTube and kind of the public facing part of it out of the equation for a second, I think that the worst feeling someone can have is being like fully misunderstood. And then it just ups the ante when it's like very public facing. And so, yeah, it hit hard. I mean, I kind of like it came up in the beginning. I am comfortable in my own skin. I know my own intentions and I know I'm not a bad person. So I never like questioned that or anything, but to have that, seemingly large amounts of people and, these comments were getting a lot of thumbs ups and it seemed like it was a ton at once. And I realized these are folks who have been happily watching my content for free for years. But yeah, I don't know. The social contract on YouTube is interesting. I always say this, but where people will watch for free. And then the second a creator offers something for a fee, which you don't have to buy, it's like completely opt-in, obviously. They just get offended at that. There's some kind of like unspoken, I don't know, rule where I guess if you're a YouTube creator, you're doing it because it's totally democratized and it's for free for the viewers. And it's like, yeah, I love the business model, but this is my job. This is my living. And there are other business and revenue streams and things that excite me that will ideally also make money. Like, it's our livelihood. And so anyways, circle back to your question though, that total misunderstanding, or whether it was intentional or not, like public facing misrepresentation of my intentions, it hit, there's nothing worse than that.
You would say that was your worst experience on YouTube?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Got through it fine, but for sure.
Yeah, no, I can feel it. And I think, to be fair, as this is something I've realized with humans in general, is a lot of people don't like things to change.
Yeah.
And so they get used to knowing you as like, oh, she was just doing the vlogs and that's like the expectation. But then there are also a group of people that are happy, and you even mentioned some of the signups, but like there are people that are happy at your evolution. And I think sometimes it's like one of the most difficult things as you grow bigger and you scale. And I don't think about this a ton. I do think about it here and there. I think one of the things that comes with just being a bigger name or getting more views, there's going to be a bigger contingent. Oh, she changed us. Yeah. Not we preferred the old Taylor or what she did before. Or, in the beginning before she was like, I think every creative, and it's funny because you see it in music, you see it with actors, you see any creative in any field, you always see that group of people.
Yep.
Oh, I liked the old version of them before they sold out, before they did this. And I think it comes on, unfortunately, it comes with the territory of what we do. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I was able to tell myself that even in the moment. I was like, the more I do this, the longer and the more subscribers I gain, like this is going to happen again. So I might as well, learn how to go through it right now. I get my tough skin even tougher because it's going to happen again. And that's just, it's not to say there weren't learning lessons to come out of this. There absolutely were, but for sure it comes with the territory. It really does. Like simple as that. Of course, there are steps you can take to, hopefully not do bad things, but that wasn't even a bad thing. It totally will happen. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I'm curious about, because even earlier in the conversation, we spoke about like the influence of your parents and even like that 6-year-old Taylor that was like flipping stuff and like trying to take trash and see if you can sell it to someone.
Yeah.
I'm curious if we took that 6-year-old, maybe we like transported her into the room. I don't know how we would do that, but let's say that we managed it. And she could listen to this conversation. She could observe your life and the way that it is now and the kind of journey that you've been through and all of those ups and downs, those moments of jubilation, and then the moments where, things were said that were like hurtful. I don't know, I'm just curious what you would even say to her. Like, how do you even think that she would feel seeing what you've been able to accomplish?
Oh, I mean, what a fun thought exercise. I've actually never thought about if I could, have her in the room. I think, so what would I tell her, or what do you think she would think of me?
Both.
I mean, I would tell her, like, keep doing you, follow your gut, do what you think you got to do, but like, you'll figure it out. Trust yourself. For better or for worse, I have a lot of trust in myself. And if I follow my gut, thinking that things will work out. So just say, keep doing you. I think she would see me, and I hope she would be really proud of everything, of the steps that I took, and now sitting in her, in this room feeling so fulfilled, and for the most part, thrilled to wake up on a day-to-day doing what I do, and living in New York, and yeah, it's crazy to think about. Actually, sometimes I stop in my day-to-day like, wow, I live in, this incredible neighborhood in Manhattan, New York City. And my favorite thing to do even still is go get a bagel and coffee. Like, I love the little things so much. And I don't know, I just feel very grateful on a day to day that I live here, and that my job allows me the freedoms to, kind of be here and do what I want. And anyways, there's a lot to pack into that, but I think she would be proud and happy and excited to get there.
One final thing for the 6-year-old Taylor. If she asked, like, okay, where are you going to go next? Mm-hmm. What's next? What would you say?
I think it will be, so this year I'm really I'm hiring. So that's big. Hiring my first editor, which is huge news, because for the longest time, I'm like, I'm never going to hire an editor. It's my favorite part of the process. And I've come to realize, like, if I want to get to where I want to go, which is, I want to really grow on YouTube, and I want that to be my main thing for a long time. I need more time back in my day. And so all to say, I'm growing my team a bit this year. I'm starting to work with folks who are helping with the brand deal side of things. And I actually have my final round interviews for my editors this week, which I'm excited about. So anyway, what's next is taking those steps to really, really take my business to the next level, and hopefully set it up in a way where I can grow it through these other fun revenue streams that I find fun and energizing once I get to the point where I think it makes sense to add those things on. But for now, it's really it's hitting YouTube really, really hard. And I'm so excited for this year. I have a lot more trying to increase my upload frequency, and show what life in New York is like even more so. Because right now they're very planned out vlogs. I think I want to get to a place where I'm just showing what kind of everyday life is like. And anyways, just really excited for YouTube specifically. And then hopefully in 5 years, we'll see.
We'll have to get you back on.
I would love that.
Because I think even just in speaking to you and, being a fan of your content, it's like you've achieved so much, but I can also tell you're really early in the journey. Like there feels like there's so much more to come.
Thank you. I hope so.
So yeah, we'll have to revisit. We'll have to revisit the conversation.
That'd be great. And for you as well. I know you've been popping off the last year. You told me, what was the stat? You told me the amount of downloads you had last year versus.
Oh yeah. So basically the first 22 months of doing the show, we got about 30,000 downloads total. That was across Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, everything. And then in the last 15 months, we just passed 7 million.
Wild. Congratulations.
So yeah, thank you.
Huge.
Thank you so much. But that's the cool thing about doing this, is for both of us, where are we going to be? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then it's cool. And I think one of the things that you said, which I really agree with, is just being present in those moments where you are experiencing that growth, like that, that 10,000 to 100,000, that kind of, when you're on that path of just trying to, every subscriber means so much, and it still does. Mm-hmm. But it's actually it's cliche, but the journey there's a lot of beauty in the journey of building something. So it's cool, because I think we're both on that path. For sure. Yeah, the journey's everything. Yeah. That's where you really do your learning, and thinking again about that spectrum of thinking a lot before or doing. I think the more that in our job, I think the more that you can just get doing, you get your reps in, you get better, and it's a very fulfilling job, and the journey is really fun. Yeah. I love that as a note to end. Taylor Bell, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This was awesome.
So if you enjoyed this episode, you will absolutely love what we did with this episode right here somewhere.